Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. So today I have a bully lore video for you guys. This is kind of a very different video than what I normally do. And in this video, I'm going to be basically talking about real life stories, real life things that happened to me in both middle school and high school, and these things and how they remind me of the events in Bully. So there's certain things in Bully as I went through the story that reminded me of things in my middle school and in my high school. Some of these stories are really funny, but some of them are actually really bad in a way too. Some, bad things that I went through in school. But I hope that you guys enjoy it. I know that you guys like always when I talk about these real life stories on live streams, and so I thought that I would basically combine this into a lore video of Bully. So I hope that you guys enjoy this. So starting off here at number 5, we're actually going to be talking about the Red House incident. So the Red House incident, basically, this is a really quick story, why it's also number 5. But I had a photography class in high school, and this was actually in 12th grade. And this photography class, it reminded me a bit of Bully, because in Bully, what you actually have to do is there's parts of the game where you actually have to go into town, and when you go into town, you have to take certain pictures of things. You have to take pictures of, I believe, like dogs, and it's like homeless people. It's like a weird thing. But I do remember how my photography class did actually want us to go into town and want us to take pictures of buildings mostly. These buildings, we never really had to take pictures of people, it was just buildings that we had to take pictures of. And then I remember we had a software at school where we would actually edit those photographs and make them much more nicer. But one of the assignments that we had for class is we had to take pictures of a bunch of different house colors. I think we had to take a picture of a blue house and a gray house, but then there was the red house too. The red house is a little bit more challenging to find, but there was a few red houses in my neighborhood. So I'm just basically walking around, 17, 18-year-old kid at the time, and I am taking pictures of houses. I find a red house, and I take a picture of this. And this wasn't late. This was, maybe this was like, 4, 5 p.m. in the afternoon. But anyways, what happens is, as I took a picture of the red house, I was like across the street. I wasn't actually in the guy's driveway, wasn't even on the sidewalk in front of his house. I was actually on the sidewalk across the street. Guy comes out of the house really quickly, just stomping out, gets all pissed off, and just immediately starts shouting at me across the street, "Why the hell are you taking pictures of my house? What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I'm just like, I freak out because I didn't even expect that. I didn't know where the hell he was. If he was just looking at me through a window, it scared me. It honestly scared the crap out of me. But I just got really defensive, and I started telling him, "I'm just taking pictures for an assignment. That's it. You can take a look at my photos on my camera if you want. You can check my photos. I'm just taking pictures of houses for a school assignment. That's all I have to do." And he, at that point, just basically calmed down, looked at me, said, "It's okay, it's fine, do it for your assignment," and just walked right back into the building. But yeah, that was just basically a quick story. Just reminded me of the time in going out in photography, taking pictures of buildings, and reminded me a bit of photography class. And believe photography class is actually one class that I did actually somewhat like. I liked the instructor, and it was actually pretty straightforward and easy class, teaching us how best frames to get the pictures in, how to not mess up when taking photos, best angle to take them at, and taught us how to use a camera, how to how SD cards work, and while a lot of kids might have known that at 17, 18, I never really used a camera before. A lot of kids at that time, this was, 2012, so there was smartphones at that time, when I was in high school in 12th grade. But even though there was a lot of smartphones, that's what most kids were used to, is they were just used to taking pictures of smartphones. Kids never really took pictures on their cameras, so it was a different experience. But that was one thing that reminded me, was just the guy getting all pissed off at me and freaking out that I took a picture of his house. But yeah, that's just one thing I'll say, is that if you're ever ever around and you're taking pictures of buildings, is keep an eye out for that, because sometimes, even though you're in a public space, if you're like walking on the street, as long as you're not on anybody's private property, is you can really film anything you want on the street, at least in my country, United States. So just keep that in mind, is that some people might get really pissed off about that and just try to get in your face. Thankfully, it didn't come to that. The guy walked back in the house really quickly and was calm, and that was pretty much the end of it. Okay, at number 4, we have the Lockouts. Now, basically, what this reminded me of was the fire alarms that you have to pull in Bully. So in Bully, you can actually pull fire alarms in order to distract teachers, and you actually have to pull 20 fire alarms, and you unlock the firefighter's hat, I believe. That's what we were actually doing for the 100% completionist. I just kept running between the boys and the girls' dorms, basically pulling the fire alarm. Now, when I was in high school, surprisingly, the fire alarm in my entire 4 years of high school only got pulled once on purpose. We had plenty of drills, but there was just some kid that pulled the fire alarm on purpose. That only just really happened one time. That was it. But what I will say about about this story is this is the funniest school story that I have. So out of all the stories on this list, this is really that I would say the funny story. The other stories that I have on this list, yeah, they are kind of bad and messed up, the later ones, but this is gonna be the funny story on this list here. This is more of a humorous story. This is actually the funniest thing that ever happened to me. This actually happened in 7th grade, so this is when I was in middle school. Now, in 7th grade, I was in a middle school in Queens. I was born in Brooklyn, but I grew up mostly in Queens, and I went to a middle school, you know, those big like 3-floor city schools that we had in New York City. But anyways, our school was a really big school where we had the middle school and we had, you know, kindergarten through 5th grade in it. So this was like a really, really big, massive school. Now, what happened in this school is when we had recess, I've never seen something like this before, because 1 year after that, in 8th grade, my parents and me actually moved to Long Island, and Long Island in 8th grade, recess was very different, where when recess ended, you would basically just walk right back into the school. But when recess ended in 7th grade in my middle school in Queens, how that basically worked is all of the students would just line up. So we had pretty much the entire middle school was having their recess at the same time, and all these classes would just line up. So you would have like literally like hundreds of kids just line up. We had a pretty big courtyard. The kids would all just line up in just formation, and then we would walk right back into the school. And this was kind of a waste of time. It was kind of stupid because the bell could just ring and we could just all just walk right back in. We don't need to form into lines and just go right back into school. But anyways, in the courtyard, there's these 2 doors. There's one on the left side of the courtyard and one to the right side of the courtyard. They both go into the school. They both go into the first floor of the school. And these doors were really big steel doors. They didn't have a window on the other side of them. It was just a really big steel door. And when this door locked, it was just automatic. So when it closed, when the door closed, it automatically locked. So if you were outside and you pushed the door closed, it would lock, and you really had no way of getting back into school unless somebody had opened it from the other side. So what ends up happening is these 2 kids, and these 2 kids, I was pretty familiar with these kids. They were kind of more popular kids. They weren't like, I wouldn't say that they were bad kids because they didn't really beat anybody up. They never really hurt anybody. But these 2 kids, they were just class clowns. They were just making jokes constantly, making kids laugh, doing dumb pranks, you know, those kinds of kids. You know, they do piss off the teachers, but they're really not bad kids because, like I said, they don't hurt anybody, don't bully anybody, don't steal money from kids. They're just more class clowns, like I said. So these 2 kids, when we're actually lining up, I just see these 2 kids just sprint right towards the middle school. What are they doing? Why are they running towards the school? And one kid runs to the left door, the other kid runs to the right door, locks the entire middle school out. Locked us out. So at that point, kindergarten through 5th grade was still having their classes inside, but the entire middle school was locked outside. And what ended up happening is it took like half an hour to get us back in. It took half an hour to get back in the building. So it was half an hour later, somebody looked through the window, one of the teachers, I guess, saw that the entire middle school was locked outside and had gotten us back into school. And we, at that same time, what we were doing for that past half an hour is we were just basically standing there. We were just standing there, you know, in formation the entire time. I wish they would have just let us actually walk around the courtyard or sit down, but nope, we just stood in formation basically we stood in formation for half an hour. And what ends up, we go back into class, and what ends up happening is the next day, they did it again, and they locked us out for half an hour again. And this time, the second time that this had happened, we went to math class, which we had afterwards, because my class, we had the exact, how it worked is my 7th grade class, we had the exact same class for everything, for math, English, so we would see the exact same people for everything. It wasn't like my middle school in 8th grade, so when I went from 7th grade to the 8th grade school in Long Island school was different because I would see different kids in different classes, but how it worked in my middle school in Queens is we had everybody basically being in the exact same class for social studies, math, you know, everything, English, all of that, gym. It was everybody was the exact same class, so you'd see the exact same kids all day long. But anyways, we had this one really strict teacher that was assigned to our class because the 7th grade class that I had specifically is we had a lot of class clowns in that. We had, you know, kids that would typically cause a lot of problems for the teachers, and what happened was we had this extra teacher, I think she was like an aide, that would follow us around, and she was a bit strict, and she would teach us English. So she was primarily an English teacher, but she was there with us for math, for history, she was like an extra teacher on the side. She was pretty strict. She was. You know, she would yell, she would get pissed. And so we're going to math class afterwards. And she's in the hallway basically like this. Like that. When the entire class basically just comes down. And she's like, where are you guys? Where were you guys? You know, you guys are all late. What's going on here? And we tell her we were locked out. And she says, that's no excuse. You know, David here, he got here on time. David here, he's not late. And the thing about this is, spoiler alert, David was actually the one who locked everyone out. The other kid was Jack, but he wasn't in that class specifically. So David was the one who had locked everyone out. And she's like, oh, David's here on time. But I don't think she was stupid. I think that she knew that David was the one who had locked everyone out. But, you know, David, I could tell David was just laughing in his head. Like, he was just finding this amusing and he was finding this funny. But anyways, she tells us, when we told her that we got locked out, she says, then who's doing it? You know, anybody gonna tell us who's doing it? Who's doing it? And the entire class, we had like a class of 30. Nobody ratted on David. Nobody snitched on David. Nobody did it whatsoever. So she got a bit frustrated. And she said, if you guys are not going to tell me who's doing it, then you guys are all being marked late. And so she marked everybody in the class late. David was the only one who had gotten in class on time, even though he was the one who had locked everyone out. But none of us, we weren't pissed at David. The whole class wasn't pissed at David for getting a lateness. We actually thought that it was funny that we had gotten locked out because nobody wanted to go to math afterwards. Nobody wanted to sit in math, and David didn't even do anything there. He was just sitting in class, and the teacher wouldn't start until everybody was there. But the lockouts, those were the funniest thing. And the third day, they attempted to do it, but at that point there were security guards at the doors, so it never really happened. And when we were actually in the process of getting locked out the second time, when we got locked out, my friend actually told one of the lunch aides, who were basically the teachers that were at recess, he said, why can't we just walk around the school and go in through the front door? Because the front door was always unlocked. The side doors, when they're locked, you can't unlock them, but the front door is always unlocked. And the lunch aide's like, no, that's against procedure, we can't do that. So you can't just walk around the entire building, to have the classes walk around the entire building, go in the front door. You're gonna instead just waste more school time just being in the courtyard. But that was it. The lockouts, they were funny. I know they might not sound as funny as me telling the story, but they were funny. We basically, the entire middle school had gotten locked out, and it just reminded me a bit of the fire drills, because I know it's completely different, but it did remind me of that, is that you had an entire school that was locked out. We were basically standing in formation. But yeah, that is pretty much what it reminded me of. It reminded me a bit of the fire alarms, and just, you know, the teachers getting really pissed at you and bully, and trying to figure out who did it, and them chasing after you. I will say this, though, I was in a building once in college, in my college building, and this was, you know, many years later. When I was in college, there was actually fire in the building that I was in. And what I will say about that is, it's nothing like you have in the drills. Like, when you practice drills, fire drills in schools so many times, you know, you practice, you walk out quickly in a formation. I'm going to tell you, it was absolutely nothing like that. Now, this fire wasn't really dangerous. Basically, we were on the 3rd floor in this school building, and it was actually, I remember, it was an Italian class. It was Italian history and culture. That was the class that I was taking, right? So what ends up happening is there's like a kind of generator thing that's in the basement, and that generator, turbine, whatever thing, it's like some big thing that basically powers the building and powers like a huge part of the campus. It burnt out apparently, and there was smoke coming from it. So it wasn't like a complete fire, but smoke was pouring out of it, and the smoke basically went up a flight of stairs and went all the way up to the 3rd floor. So what ends up happening is, when one of the kids actually opened up the door from the 3rd floor, when the fire alarm was going, because we didn't know there was a drill. The teachers were confused while the fire alarm was going off. When one of the kids actually opened up the door, smoke was just pouring out in the hallway. Now, it wasn't like really bad that it was that you were like coughing from it, but you saw like a little bit of smoke basically coming up the staircase. And what ends up happening at that point is kids just started screaming, pushing people out of the way, just running. It's nothing like in a fire drill. Like, you practice all these years where kids are just basically going to go in formation, just walk out really quickly. You're supposed to speed walk out. You're not supposed to bump into people. But no, kids were running. I sped walk out for the most part. I wouldn't say that I was sprinting. I was kind of more like jogging. But we basically got out of the building, and then, like, 20 minutes later, we were actually able to go back in. So I don't know how it's cleared the smoke out pretty quickly. It didn't take that long, but that was basically my experience with actually seeing something close to a fire in a building. It's not like people are not going to react the way they've been trained, even though they've been trained for years. They're just going to run out, sprint, and scream in just a complete panic. Let's move on to the next story now. So this story, this one right here, this is the home economics teacher. Oh man. Now there is no home economics class in Bully. However, though, when I was running around, I saw a home economics label, and instantly when I saw that, that just gave me really, really bad memories. Now this story you guys might remember because I've told this story several times on live streams before. But this is one of the most unreasonable teachers that I have ever dealt with in my life. Like, this was a really, really bad experience I've had. And this is right when I moved. So in 8th grade, I moved to me and my family moved to Long Island. And a very different environment, very different school environment. Like, for example, my school in Queens, we didn't actually have lockers. We had to actually carry all our books with us or in our backpacks, which is just a pain on our backs. But we didn't have lockers, and so that was one thing that I wasn't used to, is I just wasn't used to lockers. But anyways, is I was actually not available. The first day of school, I was absent because me and my family were moving. It was the second day of school when I was able to attend, and when I went to my home economics class, I tried to talk to my home economics teacher about this assignment. So she was giving us this assignment, and this is the one part of the story I can't remember, is I cannot remember exactly what the assignment was. I'm sorry about that, guys. This is, 2007, so this is, a long time ago. But all I remember is she just basically wanted us to write a paper. I think it was probably something about her career or something that she wanted us to research. And this is the first week of that class, and she told me that I want you to double space this. Type this up, double space this, and print this. And my printer and my computer was still back at my house in Queens. The house that my parents had actually purchased in Long Island, I didn't have my computer with me. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a printer. I didn't have that. And I didn't have a library card in the town. I didn't have access to the computer lab here. I didn't know how I was supposed to type up the assignment. Now, I wasn't trying to get out of the assignment. I was willing to do the assignment. I always handed everything on time. I always do it. But I tried to explain this to her, and I tried to tell her that I don't have a computer with me. And I told her, I can write the whole thing on loose leaf for you, which is even more work for myself, but I was willing to do that. I was willing to write even more. My handwriting is good. I don't write sloppy, I write carefully, and I tried to tell her, I can do the assignment, no problem. It's just gonna be on loose leaf. It's not gonna be double spaced, printed out. And she said to me, that's not my responsibility. That's your responsibility. You have to do it typed up. You have to type it up. It cannot be on loose leaf. I want it typed. I want it double spaced. I'm like thinking, like, come on, like, seriously. And so I had no access to a computer. I had nothing. There was no way for me to do it, guys. I didn't have a library card at that time. There was no way for me to type this assignment up. And what I did was I just wrote the assignment by hand. I wrote it on loose leaf. And, I stapled it. I made it organized. I made it nice for her to read. And I tried to give it to her. And she said, I'm not taking it. And I said to her, why? She's like, you didn't complete the assignment. I told you to type it up double space. I'm like, I've been trying to explain to you. I don't have a printer with me right now. I'm going to get my printer in like a week from my house. And then I can type up all the assignments you want for the rest of the year. But right now, I have to do it this way on loose leaf because I have no access to a computer. I don't know what you honestly expect me. It's your responsibility. It's not mine. And I told her, here, take the assignment. I did it. No, you didn't. It's incomplete. And you know what she did? She gave me a zero on that assignment. And I'll say this. There was only 2 times in my life, only 2 times I have ever gotten a 0 on an assignment ever in school. There was one that I got in college on, but that's, a story for another time, but that also involved an unreasonable teacher, and it was actually my partner's fault, but I'd probably tell that story another time. But that college, experience, and this is the only 2 times that I've ever gotten a 0 on, and I never forgot that. I was always a very organized kid. I always brought in everything on time, and so it just bothered me personally. It just always bothered me. And this, this is, 2007 when this happened. So what is this? This is, 13 plus 17 years ago at this point now. So even though it happened so long ago, I've never forgotten it. It's always bothered me. It's always been in the back of my head. It's not like something I think about every day, but it just bothered me and annoyed me. I did the work. I did the assignment. And she was just unreasonable. I didn't like her for that. She was one of the most unreasonable teachers that I've ever met. And when the story gets even crazier, guys, gets even worse, because what she did was she called my mom. She called my mom and she tried to tell my mom that I hadn't completed the assignment and that I'd gotten a 0. Now, it's one thing, you're basically going to refuse to take my paper after I typed it up, give me a 0, and then you're also going to have the nerve to basically call my mom and basically try to tell my mom that I'm like a delinquent of a student when I had done the assignment. You were just too proud to be able to grade a loose leaf assignment. For you, it had to be printed in double space. Pissed me off, but honestly, my mom wasn't pissed at me. I told my mom ahead of time and basic what had happened, but my mom was surprised, shocked that basically she had called. I don't know what my mom said to her. The only thing I know is that my mom told me that she had called. I don't know exactly what was said in between. But anyways, what happened is, later in the year, we were doing career tests in this exact same class. And these career tests, we would go to the computer lab, and we would have to take like 50 choice, multiple choice questions, and basically the test would tell us what career we are suited for. And I had gotten police detective, and I thought the career test was actually pretty good. It was pretty accurate. That's actually, ironically, what I ended up doing later on. I wanted to do history in college originally, but then when that didn't work out, I ended up doing law enforcement technology, which I got a bachelor's in later on. Probably what I would have done if I hadn't done YouTube, probably would have pursued some career in law enforcement. But anyways, about the whole career test thing, with this teacher, what happened with her is this teacher, one of the kids in my class, he said, because it wasn't one of the options in the career test, he said, I want to be a professional baseball player. That's what I want to do. And she said, you can't do that. You know, the chances of you being a professional baseball player are so slim. Pick a more realistic career. Now, this kid wasn't, like, hurt. He wasn't, like, crying, you know, stuff like that. But this kid was a baseball player. You know, this kid was bigger than me, more fit than me. And I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a professional baseball player. Maybe he is some kind of professional baseball player today. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing today anymore. But anyways, about this kid, is this kid played baseball a lot. It was, you know, his favorite sport. That's something that he was into. And she was telling him, no, you gotta choose a different career. And, like, really? Seriously? Like, even if a kid said that he wants to be an astronaut, that's a pretty unrealistic career. But you shouldn't tell a kid, you know, you can't be an astronaut. You follow your dreams. You never know where they can lead you. So this kid wants to basically choose for his assignment that he wants to be a professional baseball player. Have him write an assignment about being a professional baseball player. That's what he wants to do. You never know. He could be, you know, the next greatest baseball player of all time. You know, that kid could be the next president of the United States in the future. You don't know who you're going to be talking to in the future. You don't know where their careers might take them. You know, for me, I never imagined that I would be a YouTuber. If you told me in 8th grade when I was taking that career test, if you told me that, you know, over a decade from now, that you're going to be a big YouTuber and you're going to have, you know, over 1 million subscribers, and, you know, you're going to have really popular live streams, people are going to love your lore videos and stuff like that, I would have probably said, no, that's not something that I think I could do. I'm not good at editing videos. You know, it's not something that I'm into, but it turns out that I was good at it. I thought, originally in the past, I kind of sucked at editing videos, but I got much better at it, and thumbnails in the same time too. So years ago, I never imagined that I would be a YouTuber with over 1 million subscribers. Didn't think that something like that would happen to me, but it did. I worked hard, and you guys enjoyed my videos and subscribed to me, and I am here where I am now, and I don't have to, you know, work in I don't have to work in law enforcement, and I don't have to put my life on the line and go to a really stressful job. I can do something that I truly enjoy, which is YouTube. So it was that teacher. That teacher, I never liked her. You know, it's like, yeah, if the kid wants to be a professional baseball player, let him do an assignment about being a professional baseball player. You really don't have the right to take that away from that kid. That's kind of messed up. And last thing I'll leave off with this teacher is, this teacher is a massive hypocrite, because she would not take any assignments late whatsoever. Nothing. She would never take anything late. If you gave it to her 1 day late, she would give you a 0. I always ended up giving everything to her on time. The only time I got it was a 0 with that stupid assignment before I'd gotten my printer. But other kids would just hand in stuff like, you know, a day late, and she'd be like, I'm not taking it. 0, 0, 0, 0. But then you know what happened is, this teacher would constantly come to class late. 5, 10 minutes constantly late to class. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't that kind of hypocritical? I mean, let me know if you kind of agree with me on that, guys. Isn't that hypocritical that she refuses to take any kind of assignment 5 minutes late? But, she refuses to take any assignment 1 day late, but then she's constantly arriving to class late. Isn't that kind of hypocritical? That you don't show up to class on time, but yet you have the nerve to tell students that they can't hand in something 1 day late, or you're gonna give them a 0? Isn't that a bit hypocritical? And also, she took a long time to grade assignments. She would take a really, really long time to grade assignments. And I'm going to say this, if you're a teacher that basically tells your students that they have to hand it in on time, and if they hand it in 1 day late, they're going to get a 0, then you better grade those assignments fast. You better be really quick with grading assignments. If you're going to be that demanding of your students and telling your students they have to hand it on this date, and they hand it in 1 day late, it's going to be a 0, then you better grade those assignments fast, because if you're going to take weeks and weeks and weeks to grade an assignment, that's not extremely hypocritical. I personally always thought that was hypocritical. If a teacher demands you hand an assignment on the day it's there, and 1 day late 0, but then he or she takes, like, weeks to grade, like, a small assignment, that's laziness, and I personally think that's hypocritical. But that just pretty much wraps it up. That it was just a home economics class. It was just something that, it's just a class that I just didn't have good experience with, and it just wasn't, it wasn't something that I enjoyed. It wasn't in the end. So the only part of home economics class that I would say I kind of enjoyed is learning how to cook food, but I hated the sewing that she made us do later on. But just like learning how to cook some things, that's the only thing of home economics I like. But I didn't even like her teaching it. I just liked in general just trying to learn how to cook. But that's just pretty much it. It's just when I saw that sign, that home economics sign, because I remember it was exact same way in my school. It was home economics. I didn't remember the class originally, but then when I just saw the sign, it was just there, home economics on the side. It was just like that in my school. I just had those bad memories instantly come back to me. At number 2, we have half the football team suspended. So this reminded me of the jocks that I saw in Bully, the Jocks gang. Now, in my school, we didn't have any kind of gang like the Nerds, Greasers, certainly not a Rich Kids gang. The only gang that was pretty similar was the Jocks. The Jocks were in my high school, and they were actually kind of similar in dress. Basically to the Jocks and Bully. They dressed up in football jerseys. They were big kids. That's basically how the Jocks looked. They were bigger kids, dressed up in football jerseys. They played football. That's what they did. Now, these kids, there's a big difference between the kids in my high school and the kids that are in Bully. The Jocks were a faction that were in my high school, but they weren't bad kids. They weren't like the Jocks in Bully. They didn't bother kids. They didn't bully kids. They didn't steal from kids. They didn't do stuff like that. They were chill. They were, bigger kids, but they were chill. They were cool kids. They didn't harass anybody. They were nice guys. But anyways, about them, what happened is half the football team had gotten suspended. I talked about this a bit also in my Bully playthrough. But if you're wondering, why did half the football team get suspended? What could they have possibly done that many kids get suspended? Because I have never seen that many kids get suspended at once. This is like so many kids to get suspended like that at once. That's ridiculous. This is more than half the football team, I would say. I don't remember the exact number. I don't even know how many kids are in a football team because I'll be honest with you guys, I don't watch football. I'm not very interested in it. But let me know in the comments how many people would typically be on a football team. But this is more than half the football team. This was a group of kids, and this was a huge chunk of the football team that they couldn't play. That's how much it was. So it was a huge amount of them. So now what these kids did to end up getting suspended is the Jocks, like I said, they weren't bad kids. They were bigger kids, but, and I'm not trying to insult them when I say this, because I did like a lot of the Jocks. They were cool kids. They weren't the smartest of kids. That's just what I say. But I'm not trying to insult them. But like sometimes they didn't think about some of the things that they did. Now they didn't do anything really bad. What they did was the Jocks basically went to a bunch of parties after school, and what they did was they took pictures of them basically standing in groups. So they would just basically be hugging each other, like standing like this together. And guess what was in their hands? Beers. That's it. They weren't doing drugs. It wasn't any of that. It was just a few beers. That was it. So basically they took group photos with themselves, with beers, and they put it on all their Facebooks. And you guys are probably listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, that's what they did. They were, so for people that are confused and you're thinking, what's the big deal? In the United States, in my country, to drink a beer, you have to be 21 years old. That's across all 50 states, federally, pretty much. So you have to be 21 years old. I know in most European countries, and I think Australia too, I think it's that you have to be 18. Most of the rest of the world, I'm pretty sure it's 18. But in America, it is 21 years old to be able to drink alcohol. And so, you know where I'm going with this. What happened is one of the moms. Now, the school never found out exactly who the mom was. And one of the moms, it's speculated that it's one of the Jocks' moms. That's what most kids thought. It was one of the moms from the school, probably one of the Jocks' moms, a parent, went on Facebook, saw the pictures of these Jocks with beers. So, and for the record, these kids were not alcoholics. Like, I knew a lot of these kids. They were not heavy drinkers. These kids were not alcoholics. They basically just went to a party, had a few beers, took a picture of themselves just celebrating. That was it. This is not something they did every day. one of the moms, like, I'm gonna call her Karen. We never found out who she was, but that's pretty much what she is. Karen mom gets all pissed and offended. Oh, how dare these kids, you know, do this. And what she did was she printed out pictures. She went on each of those kids' Facebook pages. Imagine that, like, this Karen mom goes to each of those kids' Facebook pages. And for the jocks is, if you're gonna do stuff like this, you could have at least, you know, put the pictures as private. You could have at least put your profiles as private. Why do you have to have it public? But the mom got pissed. She went to each of the jocks' Facebook pages, basically printed out their Facebook page, printed out the pictures of themselves with a beer. Then she went to the principal with a folder and told the principal, look at what your students are doing right here, and had principal had basically suspended more than half these kids. I don't think they were suspended for a very long time, but they were suspended. More than half the team, a huge portion, pretty much most of the football team was suspended over that. Some Karen mom went online and had basically printed out all of these football players' pictures with beer and got them suspended. It's like, my God, it's just ridiculous. It's just stupid. It's dumb. And what I will say about this is, I'm not encouraging underage drinking. I know it's illegal. I know that you can't, you know, drink at 18 years old. You know, they shouldn't have done that. You know, they did a stupid thing. They shouldn't be doing that. But it was even stupider to put your picture of yourself on Facebook, you know, having a beer, doing stuff like that. What I think the principal should have done is the principal probably should have got those kids together and probably told them, listen, you know, guys, you know, I know you guys are good kids, but you can't be doing stuff like this. You can't, if you guys want to have a beer, wait until you're 21, and that's it. If this happens again, I'm gonna have to suspend you guys. That's what I think the principal should have done. Just send them to the office, give them a warning, tell them, listen, you guys can't do stuff like this again. And that's it. Just send them on their way. But getting them suspended, I think it was because the mom was such a big Karen. I think that's probably why. And the principal might have been pressured from, like, higher ups. That's probably what might have happened. So I don't blame the principal entirely. Maybe I'm sure he didn't want to suspend them either. But he was probably being pressured by a lot of people for it too. So that's what ended up happening. It was just a really stupid thing. And the thing about this is something that was basically talked about for weeks. And how we ended up finding out about this is basically what all the kids talked about. And when the football kids got unsuspended, that's what they talked about too. There was a pissed off mom that had basically gone to the office and had told the principal, and that's how the whole thing had ended up happening. Now, the thing is we never found out exactly whose mom did this. It's like I said, it's speculated that was one of the jocks' moms. But what I will say about this is it's probably a good thing that it wasn't found out whose mom did it. It was probably a good thing, because I'm going to say this, is whoever's mom did that, is if it was found out that their mom got them suspended over something so stupid like that, like just with the beers, that kid probably would have been harassed. That kid probably would have been bullied. I'm not saying like beat up, but he probably would have been just harassed. Even though it wasn't his fault, it was his annoying mom that did it, he probably would have been bullied and probably would have been harassed. So it's probably a good thing that it never came out whose mom did that. But that was just a ridiculous, you know, dumb thing. Like I said, I'm not saying they did the right thing by having those beers, but I think that suspending them, I think that was going way too far, and they shouldn't have been putting it on Facebook. Like I said, they just weren't the smartest. They weren't the smartest kids. They were good kids generally. They didn't cause problems. They didn't beat anyone up. They didn't steal from anyone. They didn't bully anyone. But they didn't really think about that before they decided to put it on Facebook. But then they found out really quickly what happens when basically a Karen looks at your photos. And one thing I'll say about the jocks, wrapping up this story, is that when I was growing up, you know, I looked at the jocks in my school and I was basically thinking to myself, like, I want to be like them. Not like that I never really cared for football. I never really liked football. But the reason I wanted to be more like them, because I wanted to be more fit. I wanted to be bigger. I wanted to be a big kid like these kids. I just wanted to have a better body. I just wanted to be a, you know, buffer. I was always a pretty skinny kid, and I still am. And that's what I just wanted. I just wanted to, you know, be more fit, be more into shape. And but one thing that basically got me through that and got me around that is I realized that everybody's pretty much good at something. So if you're jealous of somebody for something that you don't have, just think about it this way, is you're probably better at something than that person at the same time too. Because I'll tell you, those jocks, they were constantly asking me for help with history. They weren't good at history. History was my strong subject. That's what I was good at. I was really good at history. And they had asked me for help with history numerous times, and I was glad to help them. I didn't help them cheat or anything, but, you know, I gave them advice on history. I basically explained stuff to them just so that it was easier for them to learn, stuff like that. But they asked me for help with history. So that showed me that they needed help with that. So I might not be, you know, like big and buff as them, but I was better at history than them. So that gave me more confidence in myself. Because at times I didn't have that much confidence in myself when I was in high school, and that did give me more confidence in myself. I realized, hey, these kids might be really good at football, but I'm good at history. It's something that I'm good at, but they're not necessarily good at. But that was just pretty much it. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of that. Do you guys think the principal went too far? When I told the story on streams, and I told the story in my bully playthrough, the vast majority of the comments, you guys were basically agreeing with me that the mom was a Karen and that she went too far. But let me know what you think of that in the comments, because like I said, I'm not defending the drinking. I know what they did was illegal. They shouldn't have done it, but it's just stupid putting it on Facebook, and I think that, you know, suspending them for that, and, you know, that's going to be something that's going to be on their record, pretty much. That's stupid. That's just dumb. That's just something unnecessary. Like I said, these weren't bad kids. If these were bad kids, like bullies and stuff like that, I would say, go ahead, you know, suspend them. But these kids were not bad kids. They never harassed anybody. They didn't bully anyone. They certainly weren't like the jocks and bully. But I don't think they personally deserved that. I think that was going way too far. And number one, the psycho kid Jake. This story is, you guys are probably gonna be the most familiar with this story because I have told this story numerous times on live streams before. Now this kid, this was the most evil, probably the most evil kid that I've ever met in my life. This is a bad story, by the way. Number one, this was the most unpleasant kid that I think I've ever dealt with, and probably the worst kid that I've ever dealt with. Probably the worst person I've ever dealt with in my life, because it's how bad of a kid this kid was. Just bad. There was nothing good about this kid whatsoever. The kid's name was Jake, and the kid that he reminds me of is, he reminds me of Clint in Bully. You know, that kid that Jimmy meets, you know, that kid that basically had gotten thrown out of school. Big kid. Jake actually looked kind of like him. He was a bigger kid. This incident happened in 7th grade, by the way. So this happened in 7th grade in middle school, but it did remind me a bit of Bully. At first, it didn't remind me that much of it, but when I looked at Clint, I was like, he's pretty much like him. And I know a lot of you guys were asking me, is this Jake kid that was like a psycho in your school, is this kid anything like Gary? Now Jake, I'm convinced in my mind that Jake was a psychopath or showing some kind of psychopathic traits. Gary is a psychopath and bully as well. But Jake and Gary are very different people. Even though Gary's a fictional character, is the difference between this kid that I knew in real life, Jake, and Gary, is that Jake was an idiot, basically. He was a psychopath, but he was an idiot. He was not as smart as Gary to be able to pull off all that stuff, manipulate people like that. He certainly had no manipulation to him. Basically, he was just all muscle, just no remorse and emotion, you know, emotionless kid. He had no emotion whatsoever. There was nothing. I don't think I've ever even seen that kid smile. I don't think I've ever seen him even smile once in my time in school. But this was a really bad kid that I went to school with him in elementary school. I went to school with him in elementary school, and I went to school with him in middle school. This kid would jump kids in hallways, and that's why you always wanted to walk by yourself. I never got jumped by him, I never got attacked by him, but this was, you know, the terror of the school. If anybody has ever seen that show Recess, it was like that Disney show. It was an elementary school kids. There's this one kid that was a fifth grader named Gelman. He was like a big kid that was just constantly beat kids up. Jake was kind of like that, but Jake was even more ruthless than Gelman, much more like that. It's like the school was basically terrified of him, and that's why you never really walked in the hallways by yourself. But if you were walking in the hallways by yourself, there was a chance that Jake would get you. So there are so many kids that he beat up. I've seen him jump even kids in the hallways from a distance. It was scary. I never seen him lose a fight either. He would beat every kid up. He's gotten suspended numerous times, and he would just keep coming back to school. And I would say about this is the school really failed, because he would constantly get suspended for beating a kid up. He would come back, you know, weeks later, and then he would do it again. He would beat another kid up, get suspended, come back weeks later. It's like, this kid should have been thrown out of school earlier beforehand. This kid was not going to change no matter how hard discipline you put on this kid. I don't know what was going on in this kid's household, because how he grew up with his parents, that was probably a huge portion of the kind of kid that he ended up becoming. But this kid was a really, really bad kid. Like I said, the worst kid ever. Now, what ends up happening is I'm in a class of him in 5th grade. He was in my 5th grade class the entire year. He never really harassed me that much. He was more annoying. It was just more scarier in between classes. You did not want to be next to him in case he would just beat you up. And the reason that he was beating up kids primarily is basically a show, but also to steal from them. That was pretty much it. He was trying to show that he was this big, scary kid that could just hurt anybody that he wanted and get away with it. And he wasn't taking it seriously. Whenever he'd get in trouble, he would just laugh at it. He would just think that it's he'd think that the whole thing is a joke. I guess that might be the only time I've seen him smile is when he laughed at the horrible things that he did, but I never seen a genuine smile of, like, something good, like, something nice. I don't know one nice thing, one good thing that this kid did. Like I said, this kid is, like, evil. I don't even want to call somebody that I knew in real life evil, but it's like, that's like the only thing I can think about this kid, because there was nothing good about this kid. It was constantly just beating kids up, constantly hurting kids, just overall bad kid. And this kid was such a bad kid that he would tell little kids that there was no such thing as Santa Claus. Like, during Christmas time, he would just be yelling in the halls, there's no such thing as Santa Claus isn't real. And I don't know if any kids believed him or anything like that, but that's just horrible, trying to tell kids that I think that he did end up getting a few kids upset over it, but it just shows you the type of kid this kid is. Like you said, no emotion whatsoever, sadistic, just a bad kid in general. So when I'm in class with him in 5th grade, what ends up happening is the Christmas of 5th grade. This was, this was 2004 to 2005. Yes, that's when I was in 5th grade. Yes, it was 2004 to 2005, I was pretty sure. And so this is, 20 years ago. My uncle had gotten me a Game Boy Advance SP for Christmas. And I loved that thing so much. I loved it. I played on it. I had so much fun on it. And I remember my uncle, he had gotten me Donkey Kong. That was the game that he got me. So he got me the Game Boy, and he got me Donkey Kong. And I had a lot of fun playing it. I really did enjoy Donkey Kong. I beat the game several times. I remember there was like, the final fight was like a fight. It was like some pirate ship, I believe. I think that's what it was. But I played Donkey Kong so many times as a kid, and I had so much fun with it. And years later, my uncle ended up passing away, and I do really miss him. He was a really good guy. He died from a heart attack. Yeah, I always remember that he got me that Game Boy Advance SP, and this is one of the reasons that this hurts me too. What ends up happening is I made the mistake of bringing my Game Boy Advance SP to school. That was the mistake that I made. Now, I was a very naive kid at the time, and I did not think that anybody was going to steal from me. I guess it's just like, you see it happen to so many kids, and you don't think that it's going to happen to you until it does. But Jake did not, like, rob me, he stole from me, because the difference between robbing and stealing is force. So when somebody takes something from you by force, if you are present and they threaten to hurt you and they take something from you by force, that's robbery. Theft is when they take something from you when you're not looking, when you're typically not present. That's what theft is. And I remember it was in my lunch bag. I go to my lunch bag, and zipper is open, Game Boy Advance SP is gone. That's it. And I saw my my main, because this Game Boy Advance SP was like in a small little zipper on the side, but my lunch was like in a big, like the bigger part of the lunch bag. It was kind of like that it's kind of like that lunch bag, kind of like you take it with like a handle, and there's like these two little zip bags on the side, and there's one zip bag in the middle. Both zip bags on the side were open, and the middle one was open too, but Jake didn't take my lunch. I guess he just didn't want that too, but he took the Game Boy Advance SP. Now, I didn't see him do this, and you're probably wondering, professional, if you didn't see Jake take your Game Boy Advance SP, how do you know he did this? Because I don't suspect anybody else in the class, and also because numerous people in my class had told me afterwards that Jake was selling Game Boys in the hallway. So it wasn't just my Game Boy he stole phones, he stole Game Boys from people. I never found my Game Boy Advance, and Jake didn't get punished for it either. There was nothing ever proven against him. It's just, he was just selling stuff. He never got caught with the stolen stuff, but he had plenty of stolen stuff, and he was selling it for cash. That's what he was. So I don't know what happened to my Game Boy. Some kid probably paid him $10 for it and took it and probably smashed it. So I never found out what happened to it. And it just, and years later, when my uncle had passed away, it just hurt me so much that, it just hurt me so much. My uncle got me this gift for Christmas, and that, when he passed away years later, when I was just thinking about that, it just hurt me too. It's like, that was just something that I enjoyed a lot, but it was always a way to remind me of my uncle too. I do have the Game Boy Advance SP. I do still have the Game Boy Advance kind of like bag, like that little carry-on bag that my uncle got me. I still have that. I've treasured that, but the Game Boy Advance SP had gotten stolen. And now, about this, my uncle also never found out that the Game Boy Advance SP had gotten stolen. I never ended up telling him. I was too scared to tell him that, like, something that he had gotten me for Christmas, that it basically had gotten stolen, that some, horrible kid had taken it from me. I don't know how he would have reacted, but I never ended up telling him. But anyways, moving forward with the story, how this goes on is, Jake, or what would I say, is Clint. Clint has, Jimmy steal a bunch of bikes, and just bring it back to his lockup in Bully. And Clint is a psycho kid. He's constantly looking for a fight. He's constantly, hurting himself. And Jake is very similar to Clint in that regard. He's a very unstable kid. Will beat you up and turn on you in a second. And just little to no emotion, just sadistic overall. There's nothing good about him. And like I said, Jake looks very similar to Clint, like a big kid like that, kind of bald, buzz cut. That's basically what Jake looked like. He looked very similar to Clint, which is why he reminds me. And also his personality is very similar to Clint. So moving forward, what ends up happening is 2 years later, I'm in 7th grade. So this Game Boy Advance SP story, though, even though it was sad that my Game Boy Advance got stolen, the story does have a good ending. What ends up happening is, I'm in 7th grade, and there's this kid that's in the cafeteria. This is like right at the start of the year. It was September, October of 7th grade. When was 7th grade? This was probably 2006. 7th grade, yeah, 2006. I think what it was, or 2006, or was it 2007? Whatever. This is when it was 7th grade. This was, a very long time ago, over a decade and a half ago. Anyways, what happens is, I go into the cafeteria, and this dumb kid, that's basically, he was kind of like a class clown in a way, too. He wasn't really, like, that harmful of a kid, but he would make dumb jokes. So this kid starts saying stupid crap to me when I'm just trying to sit down in the cafeteria, trying to have food. And we had these really long lunch tables in my cafeteria, like those really, really long tables where basically you could probably have like 20 kids on one side, 20 kids on the other side, really long table. So I'm trying to sit down, and this kid just starts basically saying a bunch of nasty crap to me. Pretty offensive stuff, racist stuff to me as well. He starts calling me the P word for Polish people. It's a racist word against Polish people, dumb P. He keeps telling me that, Polish people are stupid, a bunch of other crap like that. And at that point, I'm not having it. I'm just not in a good mood that day. And what I did was, I shouldn't have done this. I kind of regretted doing this. But what I did was, I basically gave in to my anger. And what I did was, I didn't hurt him, but I started insulting him back. And what I did was, I said to him, well, I might be a dumb Polish person, but, you're going to be short for the rest of your life. That's what I said to him, because I was literally like a foot taller than him. He was like a pretty short kid. And I shouldn't have said that. It was a mean thing for me to say, and it was a rude thing for me to say. I shouldn't have said that. I admit that I said, nasty thing to him back. But like I said, I was not in a good mood. He was just, saying racist, offensive things to me. I was just trying to sit down, trying to have my lunch, and he just started a problem. We never really had a problem before that. We never had one. But he was just looking for a problem. I guess that he was trying to make some stupid jokes that people were going to laugh at. And when I said that to him and I called him short, pretty much most of the lunch table had laughed. He was basically embarrassed. The class clown was being embarrassed at that point. And this is a different class clown than those two who were locking everybody out, by the way. But anyways, what ends up happening with this kid, and we'll call this kid James. That's just what I'm gonna call him for this story here. I'm not gonna say his real first name because there's a reason for that later on, because I don't really have an issue with him anymore. So I don't want to label him even by his first name, just bad way. But we're just gonna call him James for this story. So what ends up happening is we're out for recess later on, and what he does is he actually pushes me from the back. He comes up right behind me, just cheap shots me, just like that, and just knocks me to the ground. Now, I didn't break anything, I didn't get anything. My arm got kind of scraped up when I hit the concrete, because it was just concrete that I was standing on. We didn't really have grass in my in the courtyard where it was just pretty much concrete. That's what it was. Now, what ends up happening is when he pushed me, the lunch aide saw that and sent both of us to the office. Now, I really didn't want this to happen. I didn't want a lunch aide to see this, and the reason I didn't want a lunch aide to see this is because I knew that when we both going to get sent to the office, I wasn't scared about getting in trouble. I knew I wasn't going to get in trouble, but I knew that he was probably going to get suspended. I knew that. And at that point, if I get sent to the office with him, people are going to think that I snitched on him. That's basically what people are going to think on. And in my middle school in Queens, that was a big no-no. You don't talk to the teachers. You don't do stuff like that. And so I was, scared that people were basically going to think that I snitched on him, because I wasn't like a class clown. I wasn't like a bad kid. I would behave myself, but I minded my own business. That's why kids oftentimes didn't have problems with me, because I minded my own business. I didn't get involved in other kids' affairs. But we both get sent to the office. I remember his dad comes in, and his dad gets all pissed, and his dad actually forced him to apologize to me and said to him that you're lucky you didn't break his arm, I mean my arm. But he ends up getting suspended. He got suspended. And what ends up happening is, now, this is near the end of the year. So this is like, many months later. So this is like, the start of the year. Many months later, near the end of the year, what happens is, we are outside at recess again. That kid's, back from his suspension. He's long been back from his suspension. But anyways, there was kind of like this playground area where there was like a jungle gym and a bunch of other stuff, and it was typically where like the little kids would go. But because the middle school was outside at that time, middle school had recess. We didn't really have recess with first for kindergarten through fifth grade. We just had recess as just a middle school. What happened is, that kid, James, the kid who had, pushed me, months prior, was just happened to be walking around in that jungle gym area. And that area, you were not able to see that much. That it didn't have that much visibility. If you were from the courtyard, you were not able to see the jungle gym that well, because the jungle gym was kind of like a little bit smaller than the jungle gym in Recess, the show Recess. I'm referring to Disney show. It's kind of smaller than that. There was like this big jungle gym thing, but if you were at an angle, you would not be able to see what was going on behind it. And I see Jake just creeping up behind James at that point. And I knew exactly what Jake was gonna do at that point. I knew it. I didn't know what to do. I froze. I didn't know if I should scream or say something. I didn't know. Maybe I should have said something. But anyways, I see Jake just come up behind James, and Jake just hits him in the back of the head, like really hard. Now, this is much worse than what James did to me. Much worse, because James just pushed me. Jake hit him like this, just right here on the back of the head, and he just fell flat down. Now, the ground where the jungle gym was, it was kind of like this foam kind of ground, so he didn't just go, head first into concrete. So I guess that probably minimized his injuries, but he got hit on the back of the head bad. His glasses had gotten smashed. It was not good, and Jake had done this primarily to take his wallet. That's what it was about. It was about taking his wallet from him. And after the kid got knocked down, I had gotten really angry. I was getting really pissed at that point. And even though this was the kid, you're thinking to yourself, this is the kid who pushed you, right, Patrick? So it's karma coming right back to him. But no, I didn't see it that way, because did this kid do a really bad thing by pushing me and, starting a fight with me? Yeah, he shouldn't have pushed me, but he didn't deserve that. And what Jake did to him, that was much, much worse. Is, when he pushed me, I was gonna get maybe scraped up a little bit, maybe could have sprained something, maybe in the worst case, broken bone. What Jake did could have killed him. That was really, really bad. And I got pissed at that point, because this is the guy who stole my Game Boy. And I never forgot Jake. I remember this. Whenever I looked at him, I would always remember, this is the kid who had stolen my Game Boy Advance. This is the kid who had taken it from me. And I seen Jake beat up so many kids. It's had happened so many times. And now this crap happened. I see Jake, come up behind him. Nobody saw Jake. As far as I'm aware, nobody else saw Jake do it besides me. And most of the people probably suspected that it was Jake. Most of them probably suspected that he did it. But what ended up happening is I got so pissed at Jake, because I was just tired of this kid. I was tired of this evil, scummy bastard. Excuse my language. It's exactly what this kid was, a bastard. I was just tired of this, constantly terrorizing kids, sadistic, just terrorizing kids, stealing from kids, beating kids up. This kid was a menace. That's exactly what he was. Like I said, this kid was like evil, like a psychopath. He had no conscience, no emotion, no sense of empathy for anyone, and he would constantly get suspended and constantly brought back, and the school would do nothing about it. Nothing. And that's why I said my school failed. They did. Because this kid should have been thrown out way before. He should not have been able to beat up that many kids and get away with it. So I'm going to say the school really failed, because they should have thrown this kid out much more before that. So what I ended up doing, I got my revenge on Jake. What did I do? I went to the assistant principal's office, and basically I told her, I saw what Jake did, and I can verify that he was the one who knocked James down. He did this to him. And the assistant principal, what she wanted me to do is she basically wanted me to sign like a statement, something like that I saw Jake do this. And I told her, if I sign this, is Jake going to know that I had told you this? And she's like, no, he will never find out about it. Don't worry about it. I won't tell anyone. And so I signed that off, and Jake had gotten thrown out of school. Now, I don't know if he had gotten expelled. I think he would have gotten expelled, because he nearly, like I said, he nearly killed this kid. But he had basically gotten thrown out of school. And for the rest of the year, I never saw him again. I never saw Jake. That was it. And this, what I'll say about this is this was my revenge, basically. This is my revenge. You took my Game Boy Advance SP that my uncle had given me, and this was my revenge on you. You screwed me over, And so this was a way of me getting payback on Jake for that. Now, I'll tell you this, is I have never told on anyone before. I've never done that. This was really the only time I've ever done that. I've ever told on anybody like that. I haven't done that before. And, you know, when I told this story on my stream, I had a few people saying, oh, you snitched on him, you ratted him out. But here's the thing is, snitching is more of when you're part of something. When you're part of something bad and you tell on the other kids because you want to get less, you know, punishment. That's what snitching was. What I did was, you know, the honest thing, the good thing is, this kid, like I said, he was a menace. He was beating kids up, he was hurting kids, and for kids not to tell a teacher on him is he was getting away with all this crap. That's pretty much what it was. He was a danger to pretty much all the kids there. You know, he stole from me, but more importantly is he was a danger because he was constantly hurting kids, threatening kids, beating kids up. You know, how many kids have gotten seriously hurt because of this guy? And the thing about James, the kid that he had knocked down, is he had actually been in the office when I was signing that statement. So he knew that I was the one who had basically, you know, told on Jake for that, and Jake had gotten thrown out of school. And he was generally surprised that I was there, and he never told anyone. He never told anyone that I was the one who wrote the statement. No one ever bothered me about it. No one ever, you know, talked about it. You know, kids were just saying that Jake had basically gotten suspended, thrown out, whatever. Nobody saw him again. They didn't know what happened to him. And I think kids were relieved because when you really think about it, is, you know, I probably saved other kids. I'm not trying to be like play a hero or something like that, but I probably saved other kids. Because think about all the other kids this kid was probably going to hurt. If this kid stayed in school, he probably would have stolen from more kids, threatened more kids, beat more kids up, and by me getting him thrown out of school, basically he can't hurt anybody in that time. You know, he's at home, he's wherever he is, he can't hurt anybody, so he's not at school. So that's what it is. The only time he can hurt kids, I guess, is after school hours. But, you know, that minimizes the amount of people that are actually going to get hurt with him. That minimizes the amount of people that are going to come in contact with him. So, like I said, there's nothing good about this kid. And it was also my revenge, also, for him stealing my Game Boy. That also made it very personal for me. Is I hated this kid. I did not like him. I just really, really did not like him. Now, for people that say, oh, you snitched? No, I don't owe this kid anything. Like I said, I don't owe him anything. This is the only time that I did it. This is the only time that I told on anybody, that I went and told on anybody. I've never done it before. This is the only time I did it. And it was because this kid was like I said, he was a menace. He hurt people, he hurt so many kids so much, and just a complete scumbag. So he stole from me. You know, for people that say like, oh, you know, he snitched, he stole from me. So, you know, what was I supposed to do? I was supposed to fight this kid? I had no chance fighting this kid. You know, he would have torn me to shreds. He possibly would have even killed me. You know, he would have put me in the hospital if I basically tried to get into a fight with him. I kept my distance from this kid. I watched out for this kid, but I was just tired of this kid terrorizing the school. And, you know, my Game Boy being taken from me, it played a huge part in that. Because I hated this kid. I did not like him. And as for James, the reason I didn't use his real first name in this story is because what ended up happening is he changed. He was never like that again. He became a more well-behaved kid. Even though I moved the next year, I moved in 8th grade. From what my friends told me about him, is he changed. He was not the same kid anymore. He was a different kid, more well-behaved kid, which shows you that kids can change. I don't know if Jake ever changed. I can't imagine somebody like him actually becoming a good kid. I don't even know what Jake is doing right now. I have no idea. But that was basically it. Is he changed? And what happened is years later, this is like a year later, is Call of Duty World at War came out. And that's what me and my friends were playing on PS3. So me and a few of my friends from Queens, we were actually playing Call of Duty World at War. And he had actually added me because he knew a few people from school who were playing World at War, and he added me. And he actually apologized to me over that. He apologized to me over pushing me, and I told him it's fine. I told him not to worry about it. So we were cool at that point. And I even have him added still on my friends list on PlayStation. You know, this is, you know, years later. But that's basically that. Is, you know, he changed. You know, he's not a scumbag anymore. That first kid who pushed me. But Jake, on the other hand, that Jake is a horrible kid and a menace. And this just teaches you a valuable lesson. Is, like I said, there's a difference between snitching and being honest, you know, doing the right thing. That's what I would say. Because, like, if you tell on a kid for, like, chewing gum in the hallway, you're a scumbag. You're just an idiot. You're gonna tell on kids for something so stupid like that. But if there's, like, a kid who's bullying other kids, actually hurting other kids, and you know about it, you should come forward. I should have come forward earlier. I shouldn't have waited 2 years for that. I should have come forward earlier. But it was also a little bit of a fear of Jake. I was also scared of him. But at that point, I was just pissed, and I was just tired of his crap. I was just not gonna. I saw him hurt this kid like that. Like I said, this kid hurt this kid that Jake hit. He hurt me originally, but even he didn't deserve that. It was just cruel, and it was just horrible, and it was just something that yeah. I mean, like, I'm getting a bit emotional over this whole thing here, but that was just pretty much it. It's just, I know I'm kind of talking a lot here, but it's just something that I never forgotten, and it's a horrible kid. And so if you see somebody, if you're in school and you see somebody like Jake, you see somebody doing crap like that, tell a teacher, because you don't want kids to get hurt. It's not snitching. If somebody's bullying other kids, you should tell a teacher about that. There's no excuse for why Jake did, there's no justification for the things that Jake did. It's horrible. It's just bad in general. So, you know, you can't allow behavior like that to happen. And I remember that in one of my favorite TV shows when I was a kid growing up was Boondocks. And Boondocks also reminded me a bit of this. Is that not that episode with that psycho kid that Riley hangs out with, even though he kind of is like Jake, that psycho kid. I forget it, that psycho kid that Riley hung out with in Boondocks. I guess now that I think about it, he kind of is like Jake. Just basically a menace. But the episode that kind of reminded me of this was an episode where it's what's his name? The two guys, Ed and what's the characters in Boondocks? Ed and the other guy. Damn, how do I forget Ed and Rummy? That's who they were, Ed and Rummy, those two guys. So that episode where Ed and Rummy were actually breaking into houses. They were breaking into houses. And at that time that they were actually breaking into houses, they actually broke into Riley's grandpa's garage. And they took his car. And so his grandpa's car had gotten stolen. And the grandpa's like, tell the police who did it. And Riley's like, you know, codes of the streets is you don't snitch. You don't do stuff like that. But these guys, you owe these guys nothing. You owe these guys no loyalty. These guys came onto your property and stole your grandpa's car. You don't owe them anything. They stole from you. So tell the police, you know, who did it. But he didn't want to. He didn't want to snitch on them, and they got away with it. And what ends up happening is, at the end of the episode, they actually stole his bike. So he refused to snitch on them, and they went from stealing his grandpa's car to stealing his bike, and his grandpa was making fun of him, saying, oh, you're not going to snitch on them now, are you? So he was like, oh, code of the streets, just don't snitch, but now it's you're getting something stolen from you by these guys. That's it. Some people think like that, is that they're not going to tell whatsoever. But like I said, it depends on what you tell on somebody for, because that's the only time I ever told on anybody for, was the Jake thing. But, you know, if you're going to tell on somebody, it has to be something that it's something actual, like an actual threat. Is there's a really bad kid that is hurting other kids, get a good teacher involved, a teacher that you trust, a teacher that you know is going to do the right thing. Not like an incompetent teacher, but a teacher that you trust would be able to handle this situation. That's pretty much the moral of the story is, you know, don't let these bullies, don't even let these bullies basically have an inch. Is if there's something you can do to stop it, you know, let an adult know. Let an adult that you trust know, and they will take care of it. And so, you know, that assistant principal kept her word to me. You know, Jake never found out about that. Nobody ever found out that I was the one who got Jake thrown out of school. People were generally surprised about that. I never told anybody really that I had gotten Jake thrown out of school. Only James knew, and a few of my other close friends knew, and they didn't tell anybody. But that was pretty much it. Is, you know, he's a bastard, and he didn't deserve to get thrown out of school. Now, I don't know what happened to him. For people asking me, where is Jake now? What is he doing with his life? I have absolutely no idea. And honestly, I don't even want to know. But thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys liked this video. It's just me talking about things in Bully that just generally reminded me of my times middle school and high school. Some funny things, but also some horrible stories. So thank you guys for watching, and if you guys do enjoy this video, if you guys did really enjoy this video, me telling these stories, do drop a like on it, because I do want to make another video like this, but basically a video just me talking about the horror stories in retail. So thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys did enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.